Okay, let's share my screen. So, welcome to Salesforce Developer Group, Varanasi, India, and thanks for everyone joining. And Happy New Year, everyone. And I hope your dream and success will come true in 2024. And so, let's start about me. So, my name is Ashish Madhukar. I'm a founder of SFDC Madhukar YouTube channel and website, and I have total 5+ year experience in the Salesforce development system and 8 years Salesforce certified and 2 years co So I am working as a senior Salesforce developer in KBP Business Solution. My expertise in LWC and REST API integration. So let's about me and Meghes. So I'm a group leader of this group, and today our speaker is Meghes Sena. Let's talk about the Meghes Sena. So yeah, he is a Salesforce developer working in a Deloitte, and he is also the MuleSoft mentor, and also he is MuleSoft industry champion as well. He is 4x Salesforce certified developer and 1x MuleSoft developer, and also he got 5x hacker rank certified on a hacker rank basically. So today our topic is guide to integration with the MuleSoft 101. So we will learn about the more how the what is the MuleSoft, how we can learn MuleSoft, and what the resources available to learn the MuleSoft, and how we can integrate with Salesforce in third party to get data and observe the data, all the kind of integration with the MuleSoft. So let's succeed together. And over to you, Megan. I hope Megan is here. Stop sharing.
Yes, I'm sharing my
Yeah,
screen.
yeah.
I hope it's visible.
Yes, yes, it's video.
Okay. So thank you everyone for joining in today's session, and we'll be learning about MuleSoft Basics 101. This is about me. I am Megesh Shenoy. I am a Salesforce developer with 2+ years of experience, a Salesforce and a MuleSoft certified developer, a mentor. I recently spoke about MuleSoft at Salesforce Developer Days in India as well. I was also featured as Muley of the Month and awarded with Up and Comers Award by MuleSoft. I am also an Answers leader and active member of Salesforce Trailblazer Community Forum. So before moving on to the actually learning about MuleSoft, many of you who are the Salesforce developer or have been in the Salesforce ecosystem, right? So when it comes down to integration, the first point comes in how can I integrate? You will first think about Apex, then we have external services, and uh, the third tool or the product which you all guys must be thinking would be about MuleSoft, right? But many of you won't be actually knowing about APIs as well. What are APIs? You will be using APIs in your day-to-day life, right? For example, booking a plane ticket or having like booking a seat at your favorite movie hall or anything like such like. So back of so in the back end, everything is powered by these APIs. APIs in general stands for an application programming interface, right? Even though it looks a very, a heavy word like application programming interface, but in simple terms, it basically means that we are integrating two different systems using APIs, right? So an X system may be using some different technology and a Y system will be using some different technology altogether. This API acts like a middleware, so such that we can integrate both of these systems together, right? For example, this is like a popular example whenever we are defining an API. So you go to a restaurant, you are a customer over there, right? And now you want to order the food. Suppose you want to order something like Hakka noodles over there. So you will convey this to the waiter, right? You will send in the request to the waiter, Then the waiter would again send the request to the kitchen. The chef will cook it for you. You get the response, right? Now you see, you are the customer, the kitchen is some different entity altogether. And this API would basically help you to get whatever you want without knowing what is the implementation of this application present, right? So this is like all about API. Now, the other point which comes down is like using MuleSoft as your integration platform, right? For example, in Salesforce, you are working on a some Salesforce project, and you someone says that I want to integrate my SAP system with my Salesforce, right? So many of you would write code, or people who are not that proficient with writing code, right? You will be thinking about how we can integrate it using flows, right? So, such like the amount of flexibility Apex Code provides, flows don't provide that amount of flexibility. Then automatically you would turn to using MuleSoft, right? But many people lack the ability to understand what is MuleSoft and how you can get started with it, right? So, what are the like when we should use MuleSoft and anything? And this is what we'll be covering as part of our today's meetup. So whenever you hear the term MuleSoft, there is another term that resonate it with. It's API-led connectivity. So let's understand what API-led connectivity is and why MuleSoft is a market leader when it comes to the integration space. So if we see over here, the business gap face a widening transformation delivery gap. Now we all know that internet, well, like the technology has boomed a lot, right? Now each and everyone has a smartphone in their hand. They can tune into YouTube, watch so many videos, and upskill themselves, right? So even with not only YouTube, but if you see any other businesses, they have to provide that they must have the technology in order to satisfy the customer needs, right? So if you see, the business demands will go on expanding, right? Now we have automation, AI, cloud, SaaS, mobile analytics. All of these are now booming a lot. These are the current market demands. But what is the problem that most of the companies face today? It's with the delivery capacity. Now with each and everything, like for example, if you want to create a SaaS application, it would obviously take some time, right? It's not that easy, and we have to write so many lines of code, right? So if you see, the transformation delivery gap just widens, right? So if if this gap is not uh, I would say shorten, then the organization would start losing out money and someday they will close up, right? So we see 82% of business teams say that they need easy access to data and IT capabilities. Only 37% of organizations say they have the technology and skills to pay. Now we see we have 82% of business teams, right? They require the IT, they require all of these things. While on 37% has the capacity or the skill set. For example, if you know, for Ashish is a integration developer, right? He is skilled in integration. Ashish develops like many companies won't be having like him, right? Or any other example, we won't like many companies won't be having any skilled resource, right, in their company. So this is what the companies face today. If we have a good amount of resource, then this wouldn't have been there. But many companies still do lack, right, in getting a skilled resource for their organization. So when it comes to an API-led connectivity, it's just a methodical way or a systematic way of connecting data to applications through APIs that are usable within an organization's ecosystem. Now, for example, if you look at this image, you are shopping at an e-commerce. For example, you can take like an Amazon as an example. In the background, there are so many APIs, right? For example, the Google Maps API, the Instagram. Again, you have their own backend services, the AWS services, right, powering the Amazon. So we don't create one single integration solution. Instead, we create a block, right, for like Stripe for payment, and we create a block. So we create many integrations or many APIs. So by using API-led connectivity, we break the integrations into building blocks with each block serving its own purpose, right? For example, placing or storing a data in SAP, or creating customer record in Salesforce, right? So we don't create one integration solution, but we create these blocks kind of thing, right? Now these building blocks are discoverable, manageable, and collectively form vocabulary of the organization's business, which means that uh, we are promoting reusability of those solutions that we create, right? In simple terms. So when we create an integration solution, we make it more and more reusable. For example, you can look at the Apex code as well. Whenever we create these integrations, right, we try to make it more general so that we can use the same integration solution at many places in our own Salesforce org, right? We do the exact same over here, right? We create some APIs only for connecting to the system, and then we reuse those APIs in order to automate the business process. Now we'll go with a scenario, or I would say with an example with which you can understand what is API-led connectivity. For example, you are the CEO of an company called Trail Sneakers. Everyone likes sneakers, right? And especially the limited rare ones, right? And your company is doing well. You have just started with the company, and you have received a tremendous great response from the customers. As days goes on, you have started to sell your sneakers on an e-commerce platform as well, right? You sell the sneakers on many marketplaces like Amazon, Flipkart, and so, right? And based on the recommendation from your company's CTO, which is Chief Technological Officer, you have onboarded Salesforce to manage your sales and service process, SAP for inventory management. So if you see, we have three different systems present, which is Salesforce for customer data, SAP for customer inventory data, and e-commerce system for customer data and orders data. So you can take any other scenario or any other organization. Many of the organization would be using minimum of these three systems, right? Or there can be many other systems present, depending upon the scale of the business or how they are operating altogether. So if you see, we had the SAP, we have the Salesforce, and then we have the e-commerce website, e-commerce system, right? So what we do is we create an integration solution. For example, the Trail Sneakers, they create an integration solution, which is like we create only one integration solution, right? To connect all of these systems, we aggregate the customer data from all of these three systems. Then we again further transform the data into to get order status, order history, and then we expose it to the web API, right? And this is for the desktop application. What if tomorrow Trail Sneakers wants to expand their organization and they want to provide the customers, right, a mobile app, right? Now you also want all of these data to be present in your mobile application, right? But the only challenge lies in that whichever the developers that had created the solution, right, the integration solution, they are not there in the company. And also whatever integration solutions you have built over here is only supported for an web application, right? That means you open the Chrome, you type in the URL, right? You press enter. Now that is a web application, but you want it on the mobile as well, right? So what you do, you then hire a different set of resources, or you align a different set of resources in your organization to create this integration solution. Now, what you do is you would again create an integration between SAP, Salesforce, and an e-commerce platform, aggregate customer data, order status, order history, expose it to the mobile API. Right now, you can browse through your Trail Sneakers catalog and everything from your mobile, right? Mobile application. But what do you see over here is many companies would basically go for because they can easily, know, they want it right. So for that right, have they create integrations and they don't think about the future. For example, at UPS or any other vendor, that scenario again you have to write code again, aggregate the data, all of these. Then you can think like over the period of time, it becomes very to manage all of these integration solutions that you had created, right? Now, this is where API-led connectivity would basically come. Now, API-led connectivity drives agility and empowers everyone to innovate. which means that it lets organization to innovate, right? Organization in the sense customers to innovate and let MuleSoft handle the integration space. Now, unlike in the previous video where we created the previous slide where we created the integration solutions by writing code, right? And we created this point to point integrations altogether, which is not reusable at all in the future as well. So what we do is we create these specific APIs and we term them as experience APIs, process APIs, and system APIs, right? And if you see, these are the building blocks that we were calling in the previous slide. So each API acts as a building block over here, right? Instead of creating one single integration, we create multiple integrations, right, to external systems, then again transform the data. For what you see over here, this is a system API that would basically connect to system that will provide you data, right? For example, Salesforce, SAP, e-commerce, e-commerce platform, UPS tool, and there are many other systems that would act as a data source, right? So system APIs are meant for that. Then, in order to process the data, you have the raw data available at the system API, right? At this level, at the bottom level. Now you want to transform the data, right, such that it would basically contain all the business, like for business operations data, right? Uh, uh, for example, that I only want the customers to view so and so data, right, depending upon their role or something like that, right? So in order to incorporate the business logic, what we do is we create another API at the process API level. We then fetch the data from the system APIs that we had created in the previous step, transform the data, and now we expose it to the experience API. Now the experience API would further, like, this will be exposed to the user, while process API and system API won't be exposed to the user, right? Because this is acting like a raw source of data. You don't want any of the customers to view all the information that is present in the external system, right? So system APIs won't be exposed, process APIs won't be exposed, but experience APIs will be exposed, right? So if you see, we created a mobile application over here, and the mobile application can now fetch all the data from these experience APIs. Now, in many scenarios, you will be having multiple experience APIs, multiple process APIs, and multiple system APIs. The end goal is to promote reusability as well as increase your ROI, right? So you don't want your team to continuously work on these integration solutions, right? We can easily create integrations using MuleSoft, and then you can further, reuse whatever solution that was built previously. This is the end goal, right? So if you see, the system APIs is like the central IT is it's the role of the central IT to uh, unlock assets and decentralize access. Then for the process areas, the line of business developer, the IT, right? So these are basically the developers that will be working to automate the business solutions, right? So they can discover, reuse assets, and compose data. And now this is the end developers, right? So in that scenario, you can take a web developers, so they can discover, self-serve, reuse, and consume these experience APIs. Now, so if you go back, so we have the system APIs, the process APIs, and the experience APIs, right? From top to bottom. So if you see, this is the bottom system, and the top is the experience. Now, if you see bottom up approach, so we see we have this system APIs are built to connect to systems which act as a source of data. Example, that can be Salesforce or SAP or any other system that can provide you the data, right, or act as a data source. System API will return raw data, which may also contain sensitive information about an organization or an individual, right? Because we are not doing any kind of data transformations, we are just fetching the data from an external system, yeah, Salesforce, SAP also. Then system APIs should never be exposed for public use, such as APIs connecting to Salesforce, SAP, Microsoft Dynamics, and etc. Right? You don't want companies data to be public, right? Because it would also hinder their operations, or it can also give an edge to the competitors. Then we go to the process APIs. Now, this is the level where we would incorporate the business logic in our APIs, right? So, process APIs are built to compose, combine, transform data from two or more system APIs. They contain data transformations which may be related to any kind of business logic. It may perform aggregation, splitting, routing the data, right? And process APIs must be private and should not be exposed to public for use. Yeah, because we are still like there are many, we can create many process APIs over here, and each process API can consume each other, right? So we need to incorporate the business logic as well as we need to also improve the usability of whatever assets we create. Uh, so this is all about your process APIs, and there comes the last layer or the topmost layer, which is the experience APIs. Experience APIs are user-facing API, that is, it is meant for public usage. Customers won't have any exposure or contact with direct raw data from system APIs, right? So the data is transformed at the process API level, and further minimal transfer data type transformations are achieved at the experience API level, such as JSON to XML or vice versa, and system onboarding becomes quite easy as well. You know why? Like, for example, in API led connectivity, this is the best part of about API led connectivity. Now if you go to the previous diagram over here, we have this all point to point integrations present, right? For example, if tomorrow I come and say that I want to onboard the system like Microsoft Dynamics or any other system, right, with Salesforce, so many companies do use Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, and use or Zoho CRM, or use many different C systems altogether, right? Depending upon their business needs, it becomes very difficult to onboard a system over here, right? Because we have to again write code, we have to understand what is happening over here. Over here, it becomes very difficult. But in API led connectivity, what we can do is, now many of you must have guessed it right, right? We can create a system API, and then we can fetch or pull the data from an external system like any other system, right? It can also be Oracle inventory management or anything, any application, right, that can provide you the data. We create the system API, then we can also like we can from the process API level we can fetch the data from the system API. And if you see now, we can easily onboard any other external system, right? We don't have to look for each and every integration. Now, for example, I onboard a system, or I don't have to look for any other system APIs, right? Because this is not my concern. The integration is already present. I don't have to look at any of the pre-existing solution that is present. Now, this is all about your API-led connectivity, right? I hope many of you are able to understand what is API-led connectivity right now and how MuleSoft is actually benefiting from this API-led connectivity approach. Now, we'll dig more into about MuleSoft and how you can start implementing in MuleSoft, right? Before, like for example, we have this API lifecycle. Uh, so in MuleSoft is quite different than other platforms that we have, right? So in MuleSoft, we have before writing. Not that as well, but we can say, suppose you get a scenario that you have to onboard a SAP system, right? In your Salesforce org, you have to integrate your Salesforce with the SAP system. Then what developers do is we directly start writing Apex code. We don't see that what are the like what we need to do, what are the responses, and then after writing a certain lines of code and investing certain amount of time, you are stuck over there. You are trying to go through documentation, pinging experts to get their help and everything, right? But over here in MuleSoft, we do very different, right? We directly don't start implementing, but instead we design the API. So in the design phase, if you see, we have these four different steps as well, or do four different phases, right? First we design the API, then we simulate it, get the feedback and validate, right? So for example, I want to integrate my Salesforce with SAP, right? I create a system API. Now, for that system API, what I do is I design it, which means that I would basically define what are the input parameters it's require, what will be the output data that the API would return, right? Then we simulate it. And once we simulate, so for example, we know that okay, this is what the APIs would return me. Then I would share all the details to my upper management or to my team lead or any other so, and we get the feedback, right? Now, once we get the feedback and everything, we incorporate those feedback. And once this is approved, right, the entire cycle is finished. Then we move to implement it, right? The build and the test phase we come to this. So this is the implementation phase. So I'll again repeat. In MuleSoft, we don't directly implement the integration or directly start writing or making the integration solutions. Instead, we first design the API. We get the feedback from that from the upper management about that API, incorporate the feedback that was given from them, and then once this is approved, right? Then once this is approved, then only we start with the implementation phase. In the implementation phase, we build the API, and then we test it, right? So once we have built the integration solution and tested it out, we then move to the management phase. Now, many of the companies would want to secure their APIs, right? I don't want the APIs to be present, like open. It should not be that public, right? Many of the companies have some personal APIs they don't want to be exposed, and what they do, they have certain security parameters or protocols present, right? So we can do the same in MuleSoft as well. So and we can secure the API, we can deploy it. So MuleSoft has its own runtime, a place where you can deploy the Mule applications. We can monitor the application, the Mule application or the APIs that we have built. We can trouble if there is any problem that the APIs are giving, then we can also troubleshoot, manage it. Again, we can move to the build phase, then incorporate all of those changes, test it, and again. So if you see, this is entire a cyclic process, right? Now, if you see, this is the API development cycle, and this is what I was talking about, right? So once we have completed the development phase, we deploy the service, right, using the runtime manager. Now we also have different kind of products in MuleSoft, right, or certain features. So this runtime manager is the place where you deploy the Mule applications. API manager is place where you will secure the Mule applications, right, or APIs in simple terms. Uh, Secure. So if we see over here, the API manager, right, it provides you, or you can also impose certain policies over whatever APIs you have built. For example, I want to prevent DDoS attack, right? And how we can do it? We can make like a system can only send a request in once in 2 minutes, right? Something like that. We can also have this. Security where uh, like no one can query, no one can hit the API or get data from that API. Instead, we'll enforce certain password, like for example, a client ID and the client secret policies over here, right? So everything can be managed by using the API manager over here, and this is all point and click, right? So whenever you are enforcing these security policies over your APIs that you had built previously, you can directly enforce those policies without writing a single line of code, and this will be all done by MuleSoft, right? And this the place where we do is the API manager. The place where we deploy the Mule applications, right, it's the runtime manager. Now, for like once we have create and deploy the proxy, we again secure it, right? And this is where we create we do it from the API manager. For monitoring, we have this any point monitoring present. For example, you have deployed your Mule application, you have also created all the kind of proxies that you require, right, in order to secure your APIs. You may also want to know the performance of that API, right? For example, if the API is performing good or not over a certain period of time. If there is any issue in the performance, you can directly start looking into the API, right, in order to troubleshoot it more. This is where we get it from the API monitoring. Now, API analytics. So whenever you hit an API in MuleSoft, right? For example, I've given an API, I can easily know from which place you have or which country you have hit the API, right? If you see in the image over here, many of the users have hit the API, or the users are from USA, right, or United States of America. So whichever region is there are consuming the API more, I can easily know it from API analytics dashboards. And the last part is the visualizer. So as you know that we don't create a single integration solution or single API in MuleSoft. We create multiple APIs, right, in order to promote reusability of the integration solution that you have built. And this is where API visualizer would come in. API visualizer will give you an entire I would say a view of your or entire view of your integration, right? For example, you have many different systems connecting to each other, right? So it would provide you something like nervous system, so where you can get all the image about how the data is flowing from one system to another and everything, right? With it, you can know more about how the integration solution is built in your at your organization level. So this is where API visualizer would come in. So we'll move into DataWeave right now. So this is an another beast altogether, right, in MuleSoft. So I hope many of you have heard about DataWeave, and this is what the newest feature was introduced in Salesforce Apex code as well. Like it's called DataWeave in Apex, and this is where for performing complex data transformations, like from JSON to CSV or anything, we were using this DataWeave, right, in our Apex code. So DataWeave was actually introduced by MuleSoft, right? And this is where after acquiring Salesforce, Salesforce started to innovate or bring some features of sales of MuleSoft into the Salesforce platform, right? And DataWeave was one of the feature. So what is DataWeave? DataWeave is a MuleSoft expression language for processing and transforming data. So at an API-led connectivity level that we are talking about, right? So in the process API, we talked about we are transforming the data at the process API level, right? So what we do is the transformations that we perform is using the DataWeave. Now, many people like will be confused with the term transformation. It's basically converting a data format or making the data in a format such that an external system or anything which is rated or anything that would be appropriate for that business solution, we can transform the data into that, right? For example, we can also convert it from JSON to XML or data. The data format transformation is just a small thing, but for example, we get a data from SAP, we get a data from Salesforce, right? Now we have to aggregate the data, and this is where we'll be using DataWeave, right? It can transform the data from SAP and Salesforce, and then it can provide you a single data or single customer profile, right? Now, DataWeave also allows users to easily perform a common use case for integration developers, that is, read and parse data from one format, transform it, and write it out as a different format. We can also perform any type of complex data transformations in MuleSoft using DataWeave. Now, if I take you to the DataWeave playground over here, first of all, I would like to introduce this like the data view documentation that we have in MuleSoft, right? So you can just go and type in what is data view or data view in MuleSoft, right? Then you can easily be redirected to this particular page. We can get all the information, and there are also certain small courses by MuleSoft on data view, right? So you can also learn about data view and first class, what are first class functions in data view, and there are so many things in. And if you know JavaScript, then data will be a piece of cake for you because many of the functions are very related to JavaScript. Now, DataWeave is a functional programming language designed for transforming the data, right? And this is where like we have a reader. So this is like a more technical, I would say, over here. But in simple terms, we get the data. Then in the DataWeave script, we transform the data, and then we have the transform data, and we send it to some other APIs, right? The process API level or experience API, right? So this is all about your DataWeave and what like. I told about the data transformations, right? So XML to JSON, or we can also perform to CSV, and there are many such transformations that you can perform using DataView over here. We also have a DataView playground, right? Online, you all can use this DataView playground if you have access to access to internet, and you have a Chrome or any other browser you use. You can directly use this like dataview.mulesoft.com to play or do hands-on activities on DataWeave yourself, right? For example, if you see right now, I have this JSON, I have a payload, right? A data in a JSON format. Now, see, I have like four or five different kinds of data. This is a very simple example. In real world, the data might be very very complex, or sometimes we may also get the data in XML format, in in XLS format. There are so many ways you can get data, right? So this is what we have right now. So we have this data in a JSON format, and I want to filter the data, right? I want to know how many of the people in this are above the age of 30 over here, right? Now, if I remove this, okay, yeah. So if you see, we have like Mariano 37, Shoki 30, Tomo 25, and R 29, right? And I got to know that Mariano and Shoki have a age of 30 and 37, and these two persons have age more than 30, right? I can also do is I can say how many of the people are below the age of 30, or I will say 31, right? I have three people right now. So this is where you will be using DataWeave to transform your data, right? You can filter the data. You can make the data, which make the data or do or implement some business logic, right? At a process API level. And if I go back now, see we have so many clauses. For example, I have the group by clause. I want to know how many, like I want to group the data that I had. So if I go right now, I have Mariano, I have 37, right? So if I go and let me add another over here, and I'll say, right, and say stage of 100, right? And I have like around uh, I have around three people having the age about 30, and I want to group by, right? So we see I am now doing a group by. Yeah. So if you see right now, I have grouped it by, right. So I have 100, like I have Mariano of age 37, I have Varanasi Nita of age 100, and then I have Sloki of age 30, right. We can do so many things, and many of you know the syntax as well, right. So this is what we also use in JavaScript, and this is called arrow functions in JavaScript, right. So this is the power of DataWeave, where we can easily transform multiple. For example, this is like we. So you can also look at the examples in the tutorial on the website, on the MuleSoft website as well, right? So if we dig deep into here, we can also know the what is the type of the data, right? Using the type of function, the what are string, number, boolean, and everything present over here, right? So there are so many things. So you can go to data view part 3, variables, flow control, and function. There are so many things that you can do using data view present, right? So this is all about your data view. And now, yeah, so why to use automation, right? I would rather see integration. Uh, so we do integration, and the end goal of integration is to automate your processes that you have, right? For example, I don't. So one of the Salesforce project that I was working, right, and it was my first Salesforce project. So it's a very big company, and they are using this SAP for inventory management and Salesforce as their CRM, right? So I can't take the name of the company. It was a German company, but they had this two people in the organization at an admin level, where they would basically send out emails to each other and to stamp the data or to send the data from SAP to Salesforce, right? And this is where they wanted to integrate both of the systems together, and this is what we have call it a automation, right? The end goal of integration is to automate the processes that you have, right? At your organization level, the end goal is to improve the efficiency, improve employee productivity. Now those two people which I was talking about, right, they don't, once the integration is live, they don't have to do these kind of stuff, right? They can actually concentrate on other mission critical tasks, right, which cannot be automated in the organization. Use resources efficiently, accelerating expectations and do more with less. Now we'll talk about the MuleSoft Slack integration, right? And this integration is actually very close to my heart because 2 years back when I started my career, right? So I actually had visited Mumbai MuleSoft Forum over there, where Dave Norris had actually shown us about this integration, which basically made me very curious about MuleSoft and all, right? So it took me like 2 weeks to develop all of these integration, and this also helped me to learn more about MuleSoft, right? And this is what I will showcase as part of demo today. So we see we have the Slack over here. In Slack, there are something called as slash commands over here. So basically, whenever like we enter some name or like whatever slash commands we have configured, we also send a text over here. Now we built two different APIs present, right? So we have the Slack ASCII art API and we have an ASCII art API. So what we do is we send the data, we send the text to my Slack ASCII art API, which is like which is developed using MuleSoft. Then the text would again be sent to an ASCII art API, which would then convert the text to ASCII, send it back to my Slack ASCII art API, which would now send back the data to my Slack, right? So I know it's a bit confusing and why we have created this. So the end goal is to provide the reusability of the assets that we create, right? If you want, I can also add or whatever solution that I've implemented over here, I could easily add all the solutions in here as well, but it won't be it won't provide, it won't give me a better ROI, right? Or it does not provide the reusability which we were talking about, right? End goal of it is to provide reusability of the assets that we create. Now if had integrated the solution in ASCII art API in my Slack ASCII art, then it would have been difficult if I want to reuse it elsewhere, right? So for that reason, I have created a separate service or separate API altogether, and an API which the Slack would converse back and forth, right? Now, if you see, this is the text which I was talking about. So we use the slash slash commands over here. It's called Varanasi ASCII 2023, and then we have a space, and then we send a text max over here, right? And this is what the text will be converted into max and ASCII art. It's called. So if we go back to our Anypoint Studio, or before that. Uh, So I was talking about, so we don't directly implement the solutions, right? What we do is we design the APIs. I hope you remember the API lifecycle which I was talking about. So in this, I have created two different assets or designs over here. And this is called a design center where we will be using a RAML, which is RESTful API modeling language, in order to define my API. Right now, this is very similar to Open API specification, or many of you have been heard about Swagger or OS that we talk about, right? So this is also RAM. It's very similar, or you can also write OS or Open API specification over here. Right now, I have used RAML, and if you see, I define if this is the resource or this is an API that I would be creating, then what kind of operations would it support? It would now support a post operation as of now. Yeah, I write the description like get ASCII art to for text, and what kind of data it wants from an external system, right? So I defined I want the data, I want the string with our example message mule over here, and it should be in a JSON format, right? So I set the example over here as well. Then once I have the data, what I do is I want to also send the data to an external system, right? So in the responses 200. Now there are many status code available, right? We see 200, 201, 202, 2034, and all, right? So over here we have many, so I can also write in 404, right? So there are many things like this is just at the design level that I see that many people would be knowing about, like what kind of data this API requires and what kind of data the API would return me back, right? This is what I basically define over here. So in the 200, I get the body and application JSON format with the example of this present, right? So if you see, I go to post and we see we have this mule. This is what the API requires right now, and its message is like it's required, and the responses I see, then ASCII art is sent in response back, right? And if you want, you can also try it down yourself. So if you see, I can click on try it down, and I have this mocking service present, right? So on this mocking service is basically, it's not an actual implementation of your API, but then it would give certain feel or look about that API present, right? So even if you, so for example, I have written mule over here, so the response would be static, right? It's not like I change any name and it would give me a dynamic responses. No. So whatever response you send, for example, I sent a mule over here, it would basically return me a same response, right? So if I, even if I write type in max over here, see, the response is the same. We are just mocking the API. We haven't started with implementing the API. And this is what the mocking service is. So once we have created the designs, once we have designed our API, we then send it forward, right, to upper head or to people to know like if this API is all good, we are all good to start with the implementation of that API. And so once we get the go ahead, what we do is we then publish the API to any point exchange, right? So have you heard about an app exchange where many third party actually create these applications or solutions, and they publish it on the app exchange, right? And then you can install those applications into your Salesforce org, right? So we have something similar called an Anypoint Exchange in MuleSoft, right? So once we have published this API to Anypoint Exchange over here, right? Then we start with the next phase, which is the implementation phase, right? Then what we do is we now will head back to our Anypoint Studio. Now, this is Anypoint platform and this is Anypoint Studio. When it comes to implementation, we'll be using Anypoint Studio. We can also use the newest product that Salesforce has released, which is called Anypoint Code Builder, which you can directly use it in your VS Code itself. You just have to download certain extensions at your local VS Code, and then you can get started with Anypoint Code Builder. And this is their oldest IDE, which is Anypoint Studio. Now the reason being is like Anypoint Studio is quite heavy. So it would like you need a good system or a computer with at least 8 GB of RAM and a good amount of storage in order to run this application locally. So if you see, I have imported. So whenever you import the API, right? So for example, you can go to file, you can do new Mule project, and if you see over here, I'll click on plus from Exchange, because you have published your asset or the design to any point exchange, which is very similar to app exchange, right, in Salesforce. So what we do is I'll do in ASCII. And if you see, I have the ASCII art service which I had published it, right? I can simply add it right over here, and I can import, right? Import whatever design I had created, right? So while importing, MuleSoft would automatically create all of these things, whatever you see over here, right? Now this is like an HTTP service present. Now let me close this. On this yeah, this is an HTTP connector by which you can hit the API and get the response. This is the API kit router, which is meant for routing purposes and validating purposes over here. So maybe you can start, like you can know more about API kit router and HTTP listener in depth, right, later. So right now what we do is we have this transform message component, and inside this transform message component you see this line of code over here. This is actually which I was talking about, a data view, right? So what I do is, in order to transform the data, so if I go back to the screen and if I show you, right? So we are right now at an so we are going from year to year. So right now we want to convert the text, right? We want to convert the text into ASCII art form, right? So what I do is I'm using a library called jfiglet over here, and all you have to do is you have to go to your pom.xml, which is meant to manage your dependency in your Mule application, and you have to just insert certain lines of code. Maybe not this. Yeah. So this is the Yeah. So this is the dependency. You have to add this lines of code right now. Once you add it, so you say that this is the library which I want to refer, and this is what will be downloaded automatically by MuleSoft for you. So once you have imported the JFiglet library, right, then you convert. So this is the function that they have it in JFiglet library, where I convert the string into an ASCII form. And basically, if suppose this message is empty, then the default the string would be an error, and it would convert this error text into an ASCII art, and it would send the data back to my any other system that is actually querying this API, right, or getting some data from this API. Now, this is all from the ASCII art perspective. Now, once we have converted the text to an ASCII form, we now want to, so this is done, right? We send the text from ASCII art API to my Stack ASCII art API to my ASCII art API, and we get the ASCII form, ASCII art, right? Now, I also want to send the data to my Slack, right? And we have this another API present over here. Now, many of you must have guessed it right. So, yes, I have also created a API specification. So this is the API specification that I have created, right? For example, I defined whatever, like what kind of responses or what kind of methods this API supports, right? It supports an HTTP protocol, and this is the resource or the endpoint, right? That we will be implementing the post and whatever data it requires. Now, if you see, this particular requires data in application access form URL encoded, right? So this is then another API which I was talking about, the Slack ASCII art API, and this is what all the data would be written from the Slack. So whenever I enter something, the Slack would automatically send all of the data present, right? The Slack would send all of these data to this MuleSoft API present. And once we have this, then MuleSoft would send the channel ID, which is the Slack channel ID, and the text over here, the ASCII form, right? So we can also do is try it, and we need to send all of the parameters. I can type anything because this is just a mocking and this is not an actual implementation, right? So I can just type in anything over here and command anything, text URL response, this app ID, and can send it next, right? So if you see, I got the response, and this is, I said, this is not an actual implementation. I'm just mocking the API, right? I want to know what will be the behavior of this API before implementing it. This is what we do basically in MuleSoft, right? So once we get this kind of response from the Slack API, right? Now, what we do is we again head back to our Anypoint Studio. We import the API. Once importing the API, you get all of these elements by default, right? You have the API kit router, you have the HTTP listener present over here, right? So what we do is whenever we have this, like whenever an user or an app API hits Slack ASCII service endpoint or the resource, right? So what we do is it gets the data in XWW form, URL encoded form, right? We first convert that into a JSON format, which is what I have done it over here. Then I create a variable, right? So the and so the basic logic lies the same over here. I create a variable the same way we create the variable in Apex or any other JavaScript or any other programming language, right? Same thing, I create a variable over here by using the set variable connector. Then we have this transform message component. In the transform message component, I create like message payload dot text. This is what my ASCII art API requires, right? So it requires the data in message payload dot text format. Then a logger is basically you meant for logging. Same way we have system.debug, right? In Apex, same way we are doing over here. We have a logger component altogether. Then I send the data, right, to the ASCII art. Now this is the connector. So whenever you publish your API to Exchange, right, it would automatically create a connector for you. And we got the connector created by MuleSoft themselves. So once you have this connector, right, you send all of the parameters, right, over here, like the host, the port number, protocol, base path, and everything is set over here. So once we send the data to my ASCII art API or the MuleSoft API that I had created, now I get the data, right? I get the data in, if you see, let me go back to this and specification, ASCII art. Yeah. So we get the data in this particular format, right? Like art or art and the ASCII data, right? So once we get this, we then transform it. Then we set over here what is the channel that they require, the channel ID, and then we have this asterisk mark over here. This is basically used to beautify the ASCII art that must be that would look elegant in my Slack, right? So I set the data over here by using DataWeave, and this is what I send it to my Slack connector, right, or to my Slack channel or workspace you can call. So again, for the configurations, right, you have to also authenticate your MuleSoft with Salesforce, right? So with Slack, so then you have to create a Slack application. You have to set the consumer key, consumer secret. I would basically regenerate the secret, so this won't be of any use. So we have authorization, URL, access token, right? So you have so you do the OAuth 2 dance, right? So you do authorize, you get the then call back, you get the access token, and this will be stored in the object store, which is like a persistent store in your MuleSoft, right? So once you have authenticated your Slack with MuleSoft, you can now the message will automatically be pushed to my MuleSoft, right? So if I go back to my Slack, uh, right? So see, this is my Slack workspace over here. And if I type in Varanasi, so what happens is whenever we create, like we type in the slash command over here and we type in any text, right? So this text will actually be sent to my MuleSoft Slack ASCII service. And this service would then send the data or the high text to my ASCII art service. Then it would transform the text to my ASCII art and send back the data to my Slack ASCII art service, and it would send the data back to my Slack, right? So if you see, if I type in Maxi, right, and send it, you see, we have this Maxi art over here, and this is the raw data that you see, right? All the data that was written, for example, the user. Then we have the response that was sent by my MuleSoft, right? This is the ASCII art, and we beautified it over here. This is the raw data or the raw response that was written, and this is the Maxi over here, the ASCII art. Now, this is all from the demo part of it, and now yes. So this is a MuleSoft automation package, right? So now MuleSoft not only contains Anypoint platform, but you can also get started with MuleSoft RPA and MuleSoft Composer as well. While Composer and RPA access is actually not free as that of Anypoint platform, but there are so many trailers and also contents available online. So you can also refer to that. So if you talk about the automation package, Anypoint platform is basically to if there are some modern day applications such as a SaaS application present, you can easily connect your systems using any point platform. If suppose there are legacy systems, right? So many companies still use legacy systems which don't have an APIs exposed, right? So in that scenario, you can use MuleSoft RPA. RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation, and this is where like it's basically a bot doing the task for you, right? It's like moving a mouse or typing keyword, everything will be done automatically by the bot itself, right? Once you like, this is where you can get the data from the from your legacy systems which don't have any APIs exposed. And MuleSoft Composer is basically a no-code ID, not ID, but a no-code product altogether, right? So whatever endpoint development you do on endpoint platform, you can easily automate using MuleSoft Composer. While it actually used to automate a different set of scenarios altogether, and this is for a different set of scenarios. So whatever task a MuleSoft Composer can perform, any point platform can perform the same, but whatever task any point platform can perform, Composer can't do it for you. Composer is meant for business, like business engineers or business people, right? Business people who don't know to write code, but by using Composer you can basically create the integration solutions. For any point platform you need to have certain kind of developer experience, right? Now this is like automation package that we have: automate anything, empower everyone, and deliver success. Now this is what MuleSoft is now moving forward with. And if it like this is like the MuleSoft Composer scenario, it's basically meant to automate a business process, right? And maybe if I have certain time at I can also speak on MuleSoft Composer, right? So this is like the sales team creates and maintains sales data in Salesforce and orders data in NetSuite. Every time an opportunity record is updated to close one in Salesforce, they have to create a sales order for their products from that opportunity in the NetSuite, right? So this is the scenario, and this is like a basic everyday scenario or a business scenario which can be satisfied by using MuleSoft Composer, right? Again, this is the scenario, and these are basically connectors that we have in MuleSoft, right? So you don't have to write certain lines of code, right? You can directly use these connectors present. For example, if I want to connect to Salesforce, I can use a Salesforce connector, and you have to pass the client ID, its secret, and everything in order to authenticate and start playing with the Salesforce APIs. Also, we have the MuleSoft RP APIs, Snowflake APIs. There are not 26 say connectors, but there are so many connectors. This is just a few of them which I have listed over here, right? So and so now so once we have covered so many things about MuleSoft, right? So right now after the call you can directly start learning about MuleSoft. This is how you can get started with MuleSoft. First of all, you can scan the QR code. You can apply for a MuleSoft mentor, right? Even though you are starting as a MuleSoft, like you are newbie into MuleSoft, I would recommend you to be a MuleSoft mentor, by which you can learn about MuleSoft as well as you can start giving back to the community, right? So you can be a MuleSoft mentor. Then, if you are very new to MuleSoft, you can also start with your MuleSoft Certified Developer One certification. So, if there are certain modules that you have to complete, if the module is completed by you, you will be awarded a free $200 certification voucher by MuleSoft by themselves, right? So, I would better recommend you to get started with MuleSoft right now, because this is where integration space won't be hampered like how it is there in the development, right? Because many companies still use integrations. They have so many systems present, right? So integration is a role which is the demand would go on increasing in the future as well. So MuleSoft is a good skill, good product to master yourself in integration. So yeah, you can also scan the QR code to join the MuleSoft community on LinkedIn. And also, I would rather recommend you to attend all the in-person meetups that you have at your location, right? The Delhi, Mumbai, or you can also Singapore. There are so many places that MuleSoft community meetups are taking place. I would better recommend you to just join in there and join the meetup, so you can learn so many things about MuleSoft, about Salesforce, right? So some of the meetups won't be on purely on MuleSoft, but there will be so many other things that you'll be learning, right? For example, integration with Tableau with MuleSoft, right? So there are so many things present. So you can also scan the QR code to join the local community meetup, as well as follow MuleSoft community on LinkedIn. So for MuleSoft, so the org which you have seen, right? So it's like a 30-day free trial org that we can all get access to, right? It's absolutely free of cost. After 30 days, you can create another org and you can do all the hands-on activity all together. Then we have this like MuleSoft training.mulesoft.com, and this is the URL. This is the link where you can start with your MCD1 journey. You can learn so many things about MuleSoft. The only thing it requires is time and effort, because you have to basic. The exam is not easy at all. You have to be a bit experienced, right? Or you have to do more hands-on in order to actually understand the back end of the system, right? In order to understand MuleSoft in depth. There are also so you can also join the Trailblazer community group, the MuleSoft Trailblazer community group, right? And then we also have a hands-on trail mix, which is released quite recently, right? So you can also follow. There are three trail mixes. It's quite there are one trail mix and contains of three modules. It's quite easy and anyone can do it, right? So I would better recommend you to get started with the trail mix. Then there are community provide resources as well. We have resource on AP, have some videos on MuleSoft, on Apex servers, MuleSoft Tech Zone, and Panther schools, right? All of these are a great place where you can learn about MuleSoft in depth, I would rather say. And then you can also start with the MCD journey along with it. This is again the MuleSoft community link, the MuleSoft community table is a community page. And yeah, that's all. And I would request 1 to 2 minutes of your time to scan this QR code and give some feedback about me. And this would basically help me to align the contents much better. So if you could please scan the QR code. It's just 1 or 2 questions, and it's completely anonymous. So I would better recommend you to like please do this for 2 to 3 minutes. And that's all for today. I hope you are able to learn many things about MuleSoft. Uh, Stop sharing my screen. Yes, Ashish, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Megas. So, some question in a chat. Muhammad Hakim is asking for the in this MuleSoft sales for Slack integration. So, could you please show where are the experience API, process API, and system API basically?
Yeah. So for this, right? So it's like this is an approach, and it's not like mandatory you have to do it. Now, for example, if you see the ASCII art service, right? I created a different API altogether. For Slack, I created different API altogether, right? So in many scenarios, you won't be like you will have only one process API, or some of the companies don't even use process API. It depends upon your business use cases, right? So yeah, so for this, it was just a small part of it, right? So I did not create so many APIs because it's just a fun small demo. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Okay. So one question another is by the Shumendra. So, where can we get the exercise to learn in and increase our understanding of the process? Basically, the how we can, just if you want, how we can get the hands-on training, like follow the process and get more knowledge about the MuleSoft.
So as I said, like there are some community provided material as well, right? Like for example, we have Apex Hours, MuleSoft Tech Zone, Panther Schools, and also there are some of the other sources or like small courses by MuleSoft themselves. These are the great way, but it's most like it's recommended to just do hands-on, right? And give yourself a time to learn more about. So yeah, you can. These are the best way. Install Anypoint platform, Anypoint Studio. Create a trial org Anypoint platform, and then just start referring to the community provide materials as well as the materials that is provided by MuleSoft. Right. Just type into URL MuleSoft Certified Developer One certification, and you can get all the helpful links that can get you started. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Thanks, and everyone. I don't have any question here. So I hope everyone get the more insight about the MuleSoft and how you can start learning about the MuleSoft and. are the links we have shared in the chat, so you can take the link and start your learning about the MuleSoft. And you also don't forget to give the feedback about the session. And also we will share the scan in a group, WhatsApp group, so you can give about the Megas session. If you want to sub improvement, so you can also give the feedback also. And don't forget to join the LinkedIn community about the MuleSoft, so you can interact and if something is coming, the new training also or new meetup, so you can aware about that the session, and you can more get the insight about the MuleSoft, and you can build your career as a MuleSoft. If in future, if you want to become a integration architect, so you want to know about the MuleSoft, how you can integrate the multiple system at one place only. So yeah, this is the very insightful, and thanks Megas so for accepting our the speaker as a, and share the knowledge about the MuleSoft and him expect expertise here. Okay, so thanks everyone. Thanks for joining, and let's meet up the new session and upcoming event, upcoming week. And thank you, Megas, for joining and share your knowledge here.
Thank you, Ashish, for the opportunity. See you. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Aryan. Happy New Year and bye bye.